Graffiti is all in the eye of the beholder. Taggers call it art, others call it vandalism. Detroit. Amid the crumbling ruins within the city is a growing circle of urban artists armed with spray paint cans. They're determined to make bold, colorful statements out of mostly derelict structures, despite criticism from some in the city who see graffiti as vandalism. An underground community that gathers in the shadows of some of the city's once magnificent and expansive buildings, these up-and-coming graffiti artists, who call themselves writers, say they are trading skills and honing a craft that has typically been practiced alone. They say they justify their work as kind of an art therapy to provoke residents to join in a rehabilitation of Detroit. Graffiti on abandoned buildings makes the city look better, said artist Ride, a 32-year-old from the city's east side, responsible for a recent outbreak of graffiti along I-94 from downtown to near the Harper Woods border. Ride declined to give his real name because he seeks anonymity and because what he does is considered to be a crime. Another graffitist, Nate Mingo Williams, 28, of Detroit, who used to paint on freeways when he was younger, said his new wave of artists is starting to band together and learn together as they use the city's vast urban decay as their canvas. It's more than just bombing, where you spray stuff and run, Mingo Williams said. It involves planning, sketching, choosing colors, and outlining. Anything where people put in as much blood, sweat, and tears into their craft should be considered an art form and not vandalism. But that perspective isn't universally shared. It's matched, in fact, by an equally loud one from the Michigan Department of Transportation, cease and desist. Graffiti is vandalism. It's dangerous and it's expensive, MDOT spokesman Rob Morosi said. By Michigan law, graffiti is considered to be malicious destruction of property with destruction of more than $1,000 labeled a felony. Less is a misdemeanor. MDOT annually spends about $100,000 to clean graffiti off freeways in Metro Detroit by either painting over it or with power washing. Morosi said MDOT sees a lot of it in the spring and around the 4th of July. We found that the best way to discourage it is to remove it as quickly as possible, Morosi said. Rock-solid rules. Serious graffitists, those who consider themselves to be true artists, have a rock-solid set of rules. No writing on occupied homes, active businesses, personal property, schools, churches, and federal buildings, Ride said. There's even a sort of 10 Commandments that were established by graffiti artists in New York, Ride said. Depending on what they're writing, there can sometimes be a group shunning of writers. Everyone has an opinion if someone breaks the rules, but we have guidelines to show respect to other writers, to the art, and to property owners. Mingo Williams agrees. We have moral P's and Q's, rules to live by, Mingo Williams said. I've sat down with other writers and told them that what they're doing isn't cool, that it's bringing heat on the rest of us. But Ride and Mingo Williams admit that sooner or later someone will break the rules. It usually happens when you're a younger writer, just into the art form and you don't know the rules yet, Mingo Williams said. At the Southwest Style Barbershop at Verner and Junction, stylist Choi Perez had a strong opinion about the graffiti scrawled on the outside of his shop. Graffiti can be beautiful and artistic, but this stuff isn't, Perez said. It's just vandalism. If it was good stuff, where you could see that somebody put some thought and effort behind it, if they took their time, then that's a different story. Perez said he has been looking for a graffiti artist to install a mural on his shop. Something nice, said Perez, who admitted he used to write when I was younger. I've drawn and screwed up people's property, but I was a kid, he said with a laugh. A worldwide issue. Detroit streets and abandoned buildings have long been targeted by graffiti artists, with some of the most notable work believed done last year by British-born Bansky at the dilapidated Packard plant, which put a spotlight on the art versus vandalism debate in the city. Mayoral spokesman Dan Lihana said the city largely fights graffiti by focusing on removing it from public buildings rather than private structures. Mayor Bing has made cleaning up blight, particularly on abandoned buildings, a priority, Lihana said. It's an issue that rages on in many metropolitan areas worldwide, said Rebecca Ruth Hart, associate curator at the Detroit Institute of Arts. Graffiti is visual communication that has a uniquely personal voice and is made with seriousness of intent, Hart said. As such, it's art. Museums worldwide have taken an interest in it and its roots in an outsider and animation art. Hart noted that London's Tate Modern did an exhibition on graffiti a few years ago, and that this summer in Italy, the Venice Biennale is featuring graffiti at the historic Fondaco dei Tedeschi. And Los Angeles has seen a recent explosion of graffiti after the opening of Art in the Streets, a current show at its Museum of Contemporary Art. Art form for centuries. Although many believe graffiti started in the 1960s by gangs of furtive midnight roving vandals, it has actually been around in one form or another for thousands of years. Graffiti was found on cave walls and on monuments in ancient Egypt and Rome, in Aztec, Mayan, and Greek civilizations. During World War II, American GIs left thousands of "Kill Roy was here" messages on walls all over the world, while decades later miles of the Berlin Wall were blazed with messages of peace, freedom, and unification. Context, though, is key, Hart said. Some businesses and individuals hire graffiti artists or publicize that a space is available for tagging. Others consider it trespassing and vandalism. Jason Fowler, Economic Development Program Manager for the Woodward Avenue Action Association, offered this distinction. If graffiti is painted on a building without the approval of the owner, then it's vandalism, Fowler said. With the approval of the owner in his designated space, then it can be a wonderful artistic expression. Tag teaming with other civic organizations, the Woodward Avenue Group has annually sponsored a Clean Up the D beautification campaign, which includes graffiti removal. This year's campaign is May 14th. Cops eye it. Detroit police have a special interest in some graffiti, often deciphering it to help with investigation of gangs in the city. We use graffiti to get different nicknames and see who is with what gang, said Denny Borg, an intelligence officer with the department's gang squad. But Borg said there are some misconceptions about graffiti and gang activity. It's not like if you see a name crossed out, someone is going to get killed, he said. That's a bit Hollywoodish. Although Ride was arrested 3 times as a teenager, he said he isn't overly worried about the risks. What he does worry about are the homeless people he encounters who live where he paints. Some are cool with it, but others get hostile, Ride said. I really don't want to fight a bum. Despite the dangers, Ride is driven by the attention from the public, leaving him constantly scouting for new places. I drive around looking for spots that are accessible, have good visibility, and are abandoned, he said. It can be frustrating when MDOT paints over your work, but at the same time, they've just provided me with another blank canvas. Greenwood T, 2011, May 7th. Graffiti is all in the eye of beholder. Detroit News. Retrieved from http://sks.sirs.com.